All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into a story that's, well, it's a weird one. It's where spirituality, massive wealth, and serious crime all crash into each other. And it's all coming from those recently dropped Jeffrey Epstein files. Okay, let's just start with the quote that blew this whole thing wide open. God is a construct. Cute girls are real. I mean, wow. That is one heck of a cynical thing to say, right? Especially when you think about who wrote it and the spiritual empire they built. So, who wrote that? None other than Deepak Chopra, probably the most famous wellness guru on the planet. And who was he writing it to? The convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. So, yeah, the big question is, how on earth did we get here? How does the guy who literally sells enlightenment for a living end up saying stuff like that to a known predator? To even start to unpack this, we gotta look at the two sides of Deepak Chopra. There's the huge public brand he built, and then there's the private persona that seems to be a whole different story. Let's just start with the money, because that tells you a lot. Chopra's estimated net worth, something like $150 million. So let's be clear, this isn't just some guy meditating under a tree. This is a massive, global, multi-million-dollar business. And what's the product? Tranquility, transcendence, inner peace. And this is where you really see the split. On the one hand, you have his public persona, right? He teaches you to be detached from material things. But on the other hand, he's living in a $14 million condo in Manhattan. He preaches peace and love, but he's also known for suing his critics pretty aggressively. And the big one for us today, he sells this idea of enlightenment, all while, in private, he's friends with Jeffrey Epstein. So that brings us right to the evidence, the hard stuff. We're talking about the documents released by the Department of Justice. This was our first real unfiltered look inside Epstein's world, his whole network. And guess who was right there, smack in the middle of the emails? Deepak Chopra. Now, this is absolutely crucial. Look at this timeline. Every single email, every bit of contact we have documented happened after 2008. Why is that date so important? Because that's when Epstein was first convicted for soliciting a minor. This wasn't some old friendship from back in the day before anyone knew. No, this was a relationship he kept going with a known convicted sex offender. That's a whole different ballgame. And what was in these emails? I mean, it's pretty disturbing stuff. According to the documents, you have Chopra inviting Epstein to Israel. And get this, he suggests Epstein use a fake name and bring his girls. Then there's an instance where Epstein asked him to find a young woman, and he apparently agrees. When a sexual assault lawsuit against Epstein, involving a 13-year-old, by the way, got dropped, Chopra's response was basically great news. He even seems to diss the Dalai Lama's knowledge, almost like he's trying to impress Epstein, to sound like they're on the same level. Okay, and then there's this quote. It's from a different text, but it's also in the source material. Apparently, someone saw him pursuing a woman, called him a predator, and his response was, "I'm not a predator, just a lover." I mean, that tells you a lot, doesn't it? It's a really startling peek into how he sees himself in these situations. And yep, there was money involved too. We're not just talking about emails. Tax filings show that one of Epstein's charities gave $50,000 to the Chopra Foundation. So this wasn't just a casual friendship. There was a financial link there, tying them together. So let's zoom out a little bit, because as shocking as all this Epstein stuff is, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It actually fits into a much longer pattern, a history of allegations and weird contradictions that had been following Chopra for years. Just take a look at some of the public record here. You've got a sexual harassment lawsuit back in the 90s. It was ultimately dismissed. Then, more recently, you've got these unverified claims popping up on whistleblower sites and social media. But maybe the most telling thing, his own son made a documentary about him, and it basically painted him as this guy who was obsessed with a luxury and fame, which is, the complete opposite of what he preaches. But, maybe the most damning piece of evidence comes from the man himself. Check out this quote, reported by Newsweek years ago. "I was not practicing what he preached and was ready to admit it." It's basically a confession, right? Like the creator of the brand saying he doesn't actually use the product. It's just a wild admission of the exact hypocrisy people have been pointing out for decades. So the question is, how does this happen? How do you build a $150 million empire based on one set of ideas while you're secretly living by a completely different set? And that really gets us to the heart of the matter, this systemic problem we call the accountability-free zone. What's an accountability-free zone? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Think about it. A doctor has a medical board, right? A professor has a university. If they mess up, there are consequences. But a spiritual guru? They don't answer to anyone. There's no board to pull their license. There's no review committee. They're basically their own boss. And as long as people keep buying their books and coming to their retreats, they can pretty much do whatever they want. And it's a pretty clear business model when you break it down. Step 1, build yourself up as a spiritual authority. Make these huge promises about changing people's lives. Step 2, monetize that. Sell the books, the retreats, the apps. Step 3, turn it into a franchise. Get your followers to pay for expensive certifications so they can go out and spread the word. And the magic ingredient that makes it all work? Step 4, no oversight. None. At the end of the day, this whole Chopra story is really just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle that the Epstein files have shown us. As the investigative journalist Vicky Ward said, what these files really expose is one big billionaires' boys club that treated women like objects. We're talking about powerful men in finance, in tech, in philanthropy, all basically operating above the law, hidden behind their money and their public image. And that just leaves us with this one big nagging question, right? When virtue itself becomes a brand, when enlightenment is something you can buy like a fancy watch, who's in charge of quality control? Who holds these people accountable? When a whole empire is built on the idea of goodness, but the actions behind the scenes are, well, not so good, where does the buck stop? We've got the documents now, but an answer to that question, we're still waiting.